Hey everyone, and welcome. I am Boater, and I'm joined today by FearTheClaw.
Hello everybody.
Claw and I used to run a podcast back in the day, so I thought it'd be fun to bring him in on a discussion of the PlayStation 4 press conference that was last week. I think it should be a lot of fun. We had fun talking about that, about when we were on the podcast, and this should be kind of a fun topic for us both to work on. So once he gets his headset all set...
Yeah, it's kind of a little uncomfortable here. Okay.
Cool.
Alright, I think I'm good. I might end up fiddling with it quite a bit, but that's okay.
That's fine. Okay, so yes, if you missed it, the PlayStation 4 was announced. It is called the PlayStation 4. There was actually some discussion as to whether it even be called the PlayStation 4 because of the connotation of 4 in Japanese culture is kind of the number associated with death.
Not knowing that, there was no doubt in my mind it would be the PlayStation 4 because Sony is not well known for original game system names.
That being said, PlayStation is a very strong brand, and they'd be foolish to ditch that.
Well, I mean, it could be PlayStation Extreme.
PlayStation Orbis, which was kind of its development name. Much like, Dolphin for the GameCube, and Durango is the development name for the upcoming Xbox.
Yeah, and Revolution for Wii, Nitro for DS, Reality for...
But okay, PS4 it is. So, moving on from there, let's get right down into the hardware first. I'm actually going to make this one big long video, so it is probably a bit longer than what you're used to seeing from me. So we're going to start off talking about the hardware of the system. If you're more interested in just some games that were talked about and games that are going to be definitely on this next generation system, you can go ahead and click this annotation that'll be right here as long as I understand how YouTube works. Which, kind of pointing a laser pointer over at you. Okay. So yes, hardware for the PlayStation. They actually haven't gotten a lot of the hardware specs down yet as far as the numbers go. We know that it's going to have 8 gigabytes of GDDR5 RAM shared between the CPU and the GPU, which with some of the physics demonstrations that were shown, that's going to be stellar. That's going to be really great.
Yeah, I was really impressed by the demo they showed where they dropped like 1 million balls from the sky and it showed them all bouncing and rolling all over the place.
Yeah, and keeping a nice steady frame rate the whole time.
Yeah, it really confirms what I said about what we were going to see in the last, or what is, I guess, still the current gaming generation, is less of a focus on graphics themselves and more on what you can do with the processing power as far as physics and objects on the screen, and we'll get into that when we get into the game demos that they showed, but that really kind of confirmed that they're really just trying to make a more realistic, immersive atmosphere.
More complete. I think that they've got the broad strokes down finally with the current generation of games. If you play something like Mass Effect, they've definitely got the broad strokes down and facial animation and all that. We're just going to be seeing iterations ever and ever closer to reality. And definitely we'll talk about that as we get closer to other points. Aside from the RAM, though... sure.
Okay, sorry.
I know RAM is a boring topic. We're just talking numbers here. Aside from that, though, aside from that, they haven't really nailed down the specs of the system, which is why, curiously enough, we didn't see the system itself. They don't know what's going into the black box that will be the PlayStation 4, so they couldn't show us the black box that it will all be in. They haven't nailed down the processor speed and things like that.
Did they confirm it's going to be black?
No, but it's Sony and it's PlayStation, so, considering the controller is black, I think we can safely assume that the system will be as well. I'll get black to the controller in just a moment.
In vogue in electronics nowadays.
It has been pretty much all of this century. There's been some moves away from it to either be the sleek black thing with the PS2 and the PS3, and then the futuristic white of the Wii and the 360 when it first came out. But even then, the 360 ended up going black.
Well, even if you turn the clock back about a decade, a little bit more, you've got the iMac age where everything came in multiple colors. I'd like to see that again.
True. So anyway, sorry. I'm trying to keep things concise here because I know... Sorry. No, that's okay. We can ramble on for hours, and I'm just trying to keep my listeners from dying of old age before the end of the video. Okay. One last thing on the hardware is that it will have support for the same sort of discs that the PS3 did, so games are more than likely going to be coming on Blu-ray disc. Now, working in a video game store, I was really happy to see that because Blu-ray is pretty much the best thing for these heavily abused titles. I've seen PS1 CDs and, to a slightly lesser extent, PS2, Xbox, Wii DVDs get completely chewed up. You wouldn't believe some of the GTA games that I've seen wander through.
I definitely would, because I've seen them.
Oh yeah. For those who don't know, we used to work at a video game store together. That's when we were doing the podcast. So we've been through those horror stories. I'm assuming my listeners all take good care of their discs because I love you guys. But yeah, Blu-ray discs are much more resistant to scratching.
Yes, my favorite moments. I'm sorry, I can't take this disc. Why? Because it looks like you just played frisbee with it in a gravel parking lot and had bad aim.
Yeah. So let's see. Games are going to be 1080. Movies are going to be able to be shown in 4K, which is kind of exciting, but I'm not too interested in 4K right now. But by the time of the end of the generation, it might be something. And I think
when
the
I
next
have a 9-inch
generation
television, it'll be nice.
Yeah, I think next generation, starting in 2020 or so, then 4K will definitely be a thing. Okay, so let's move on to the controller, the DualShock 4, which right from the start, since it's called DualShock, means it'll probably have rumble from the get-go, so we won't have any of that 6-axis stuff that we had with the PlayStation 3 this generation.
Oh, fun.
So, your thoughts on the controller, Claw?
Well, the first thing when I saw it was the disappointment with the joystick positioning. They're still sticking with the D-pad in the primary and the joystick in the secondary position. I've
Keeping
never
the
liked
symmetry of the controller.
Yeah, I've never liked that setup. I've never been a fan of it. I've always found it to be cumbersome and uncomfortable. That said, it does look like a DualShock controller.
Absolutely.
Instantly identified as a PlayStation controller.
And I like that it keeps those roots, but it is taking chances that we haven't seen in 3 generations. It's a much more contoured controller. The handles look larger. I find it tiresome to hold a DualShock controller for long periods of time. I mean, hour and a half, 2 hours. I start to get hand cramps from holding it in my fingers. And this looks like something I'll be able to hold in the palm of my hand instead.
And it looks like, if you look at like the picture that I'm looking at right here where it's showing a face on it, looks like there's even rubberized grips on the back and sides of it. And yeah, it's definitely more contoured, more ergonomic.
I didn't think about that. We haven't seen that from a first party yet, so that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, so hopefully that will solve some of the problems of discomfort. Also, the stems are a little bit longer, so maybe that'll help with the thumb positioning on the joystick.
This is true, actually. We might be able to better use the center-mounted thumbsticks if the handles are just a bit longer. So we've talked a little bit about the... Okay, so that's the ergonomics, that's the boring stuff. How about the exciting stuff? Well, right front and center on the controller is a touchpad, which we talked about this a bit last night. I didn't realize that the controller was missing start and select until you pointed it out, Claw.
Yeah, you know, that was kind of something that from the original Nintendo controller for years, and even I happen to notice the Wii U gamepad has start and select, but a lot of the game systems nowadays have been getting away from that because, frankly, nobody uses the start button or the select button as start or select. You use the, you know, like the A button or whatever to start, and to select you just use the D-pad.
Start is pause, and I'm used to the 360 layout, so back is my map button. That's what they're most often used for.
Yeah, so on the PlayStation 4 controller, they have share and options, which options easily that's your pause menu.
Yeah, that's your start menu.
That's what it says to me, or your home menu, although that's probably mapped to the
somewhere in the
PlayStation
touchpad
icon.
You know, it's probably like the touchpad probably has gestures, kind of like a MacBook does. Where, okay, 2 fingers down brings it to... it doesn't use the cross-media bar like the PS3 did, but it might bring it to, like, the guide button or whatever the equivalent is for the PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
So I think it'll support multi-touch gestures, which is kind of cool.
And,
it turns it into a much more versatile button.
Yeah, and going with the touchpad, I think that's a great step for Sony For those of you who don't know, who've never heard the podcast or read my blog or anything, I'm kind of a Nintendo fanboy. The touchpad the touchscreen on the DS gave you that tactile that tactile gameplay, that tactile control that you never really had before. And from that to the Wii motion controls to the Wii U gamepad, and by extension the PlayStation Move and the Microsoft Kinect, they've really kind of gone with that. You know, you're not just pushing buttons, you're controlling things. And I think that's a great step for Sony to have that built into the controller so that, you know, you don't have to have a peripheral in order to, you know, have a touchpad in your game. It's right there built in your controller.
You also mentioned a share button, and that goes to one of the big things that the PS4 is doing. Back when the PS3 came out in 2006, Facebook was on the radar, but nobody could have predicted, except for those fringe geeks on the outside that nobody listened to anyway, how big social networking would be in our daily lives come 2013.
Especially since we were kind of seeing like the battle between Facebook and MySpace, and everybody's like, oh, well, they're both going to fail anyway. And
yeah, and
one of them actually won.
And back at that time, actually, Facebook was still kind of centered on the profile pages, so the newsfeed, I think, really helped out social networking as well. So to that end, the PS4 is a much more social console, the interface is, and that's exemplified by the share button. What you're going to be able to do is that pretty much with any game, you can hit that button and start streaming your game for people to be able to watch. People being able to spectate games like Let's Play is a big thing now, where you record yourself playing a game, and being able to do that on console is really exciting. Moreover, I think that that should be able to enable recording as well, so that would make it easier for people to do machinima without getting a capture card, perhaps.
Oh, I never even thought about that, but I was going to say, I wonder if they're going to have YouTube integration where people do, you know, their walkthroughs. You know, so often I'm like, I'm stuck in a game, so whereas in the old days we'd pick up a strategy guide, or more recently, you know,
IGN, or look it up on a game's wiki.
Exactly. Or an FAQ or something. Now, you know, I go onto YouTube and type in, you know, Portal 2 such and such level to get that kind of, oh, that's what I have to do. All right, I know what to do. And if they do YouTube integration, that's great, because you don't even have to, like you said, get the capture card and, you know, wire things into your computer strangely. You know, you've just got that, boom, click a button, and it's there.
If developers support it, I believe this is something that's going to be more an onus on the developer, but you'll also be able to, while you're playing, people will be able to talk to you, give you advice, and you can even virtually pass the controller off to them. Kind of like in the old days, I'm having trouble with this part of the level here. Now, I think that could kind of be abused, you know, if you're playing and you have 3 friends saying, oh my god, all you have to do is just jump over the thing and then wall run. How hard is that?
I know, it's kind of like watching your girlfriend play a video game, knowing that she's not really that good at video games, and you just want to snatch the controller out of her hand. It's like, this is how you do it.
Depends on the kind of video game. My fiance can kick my ass when it comes to fighting games. Holy crap.
So can my girlfriend.
In addition to the DualShock controller, you'll also have more control inputs. Xbox right now has Smart Glass, which connects to phones and tablets that have that app. And the Wii U very famously has its touchscreen right in the middle of the gamepad. What the PlayStation 4 touts is being able to have a smart glass sort of experience across phones, tablets, the PlayStation Vita, really being able to connect to, they say, every device within your house. And I think that's going to be a little more developer supported, but I think it's something that's really exciting.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing if they, you know, can get like an app, because like I have Smart Glass on my iPad and iPhone, you know, get a PlayStation 4, whatever they're gonna call it, app for those, and you know, Android and whatnot. Pardon me. Yeah, I'll just end this sentence there.
Okay, fine. Yeah, it's exciting, and I'm interested to see what developers do with it. I think I've got one last note on the hardware here. And that's that, hold on, let me start looking at you. I had a, someone Facebook messaging me. The other thing, I mentioned the PlayStation Vita, and you're going to be able to play games on the Vita, much like how you can take the Wii U gamepad and kind of take it with you, obviously when you're going to go to the bathroom or whatever, play in another room, or if someone changes the TV channel, then you can still be playing. I don't know if every game is going to support it. I think it will. They're going to be able to play games on the Vita. Now, it's kind of wirelessly connecting. The PlayStation's doing all the work. And it's not like taking the PS4 game with you. If I say PS3 when I mean PS4, don't mind me, it's muscle memory, habit, whatever. But yeah, and I think that's really cool too. It's not going to make me buy a Vita.
Yeah, I was just about to say, that hasn't quite, even that feature hasn't quite sold the Vita for me. I'm still waiting for that big game or that big feature that makes me say, okay, I think the big feature is going to be a price drop, honestly. Get it below $200, then we'll talk.
Yeah, well, I think that integration with the PS4 is a big feature, but without a price drop in North America like there has been in Japan now, I think they're going to have a hard time getting people to take advantage of that.
Yeah, but it is an interesting feature, and I'd like to see it.
I just realized I missed a bit about the controller as well. There's a blue light bar on the front of the controller that enables it. I don't know if it's going to have actual motion control like the 6-axis did, but it's going to allow a camera that ships with the system to detect where your controller is.
I'm sure we'll have, because accelerometers are so commonplace in even the smallest, most common devices nowadays, that I'm sure they'd have something like that in that. But yeah, I'd forgotten about that as well, because I was looking at a picture that was straight on. Again, it's all about Sony giving you everything they want you to have right in the box. You don't have to go out and buy an accessory to have your motion controls like you did last generation.
The move didn't take off because you had to spend like $150 on the eye camera and the controller, and then you needed the second controller thing. And shipping it in the box is what made Nintendo so successful with its motion control last generation. And shipping the Wii Motion Plus in the box when they were able to do that.
Which makes me wonder, pardon me for interrupting, but which makes me wonder if Sony is going to consider doing a PS4, PS Vita bundle pack, where for a discounted rate you get the Vita and can take advantage of that.
That would actually be really cool. I hadn't considered that. So, that's really exciting. I don't know...
That idea I just made up.
No, well, it'd be really cool. I mean, like, an idea that I made up when we were talking about it last night was that if you have two people playing a game, it can automatically detect, alright, I'm on one side of the screen, you're on the other... Well, I'm on one side of the couch, you're on the other side of the couch, and we're playing Rock Band or whatever party game is popular in the upcoming generation. It'll automatically assign screen portions depending on where you are, which I think would be really cool.
Yeah, that really would be cool, especially in like fighting games where whoever is sitting on this side of the screen is automatically player one, so you don't have to go, oh shoot, I pressed start first, let's switch.
Yeah, switch controllers, or be like, oh, I'm playing, again, I play Rock Band is my main party game this generation, so I'm standing on the right, but I'm looking at someone playing on the left, and that would be a neat little throwaway feature that would be cool.
Yeah, all the times I had to rearrange my living room just to figure out what instrument is going to be in front of the right bar.
Yeah. Okay, so was there anything else you wanted to talk about in the hardware for the system before we move on to the software? Only
that they didn't really talk that much about, like you said, they didn't really talk about specs other than, the RAM and the CPU-GPU interaction. Which leads me to believe that they're really not going to be focusing so much on these are the big numbers as a lot of companies have. It's
I don't think they have the numbers nailed down yet. I think that by E3 they will, but they probably have like a range for the processor that they don't have quite nailed down yet.
One thing we forgot to talk about as far as the processor is that it's a typical computer processor.
Oh yeah! How did I miss that? That's like the most exciting thing.
Which,
it uses x86 architecture, which means that developers can develop for it like that.
Yeah, because, one of the things that PlayStation systems have been notorious for through all their systems and generations is the developers have complained that they're difficult to code for, and you can definitely see that in this generation with games that come out on the 360 and the PS3, where most companies, like especially, I can't think of the name, Rockstar that makes, you know, Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, they will make the game for the 360 and then port it to the PlayStation 3, and inevitably you end up with a hit in the graphics because they just can't do the things the same way.
An example was Ghostbusters last generation that was pretty much terrible on the PS3 until they patched it. The reason being that the PS3 cell architecture was so different than the x86 architecture. So now that they've gone back to that, a lot more developers are on board. We saw a lot of developers come out during the press conference that we'll talk about in the second half of this video.
Which is ironic because Ghostbusters is a Sony-owned property, so you'd think that they would say, oh, well, since we own this, we're going to make sure our version is the best.
Yeah, who knows? Anyway, I think we're set with the hardware.
Yeah.
Intermission, or not.
Well, we could talk about middleware, because they did discuss Unreal 4, Capcom's new, what is it, the Panta Ray?
Yeah, I think we'll start our software talk right there. We're at about the 22-minute mark. So, 22,
so we'll just segue minutes from hardware to software via middleware.
Yay!
Yay, segue! I'm thirsty.
Go ahead and get a drink. I'll talk about the middleware. So yeah, one thing that was interesting to me is that I'm gonna wait until Claw's back. There's a lag on the video, so I can see my eye movement. That's really freaky.
Sorry.
I decided to wait.
Yes, that's a very good point.
I decided to wait. It was rather rude of me. What I was actually saying is that we didn't see a lot of live gameplay. We saw pre-rendered demos, but those pre-rendered demos did do a decent job of showing off game engines. And there were two game engines that some companies came out and talked about. One, to start things off on the software side, was Epic Games coming out with their Unreal 4 engine. Did you have anything to say about that? I mean, it looked nice, but it was pre-rendered, so it didn't really do too much for me.
Yeah, I almost want to say that the ball drop demo, wasn't that part of Unreal?
Was it?
I can't remember. Right. It fell around the same time in the press conference anyway.
Okay. But another engine was Capcom's Panta Ray engine, which also looked really cool, and that was a little more impressive. I wasn't quite sure if I was looking at pre-rendered cutscenes or something in gameplay footage, because there were times where it's like, aliasing looks a little off, or something looks just enough off. That's probably gameplay footage, but there's other stuff that was so perfect, and the camera angles didn't look like it was gameplay footage, so it was pre-rendered, and I didn't know. I couldn't tell.
I'm pretty sure they announced that they were showing actual what the in-engine could do. And one thing I noticed was the quality of the graphics looked like something Vita would do.
Yeah.
You know, it just looked like something out of a Lord of the Rings movie, just with the lighting and the textures and just how crisp and detailed and deep it was.
And we're getting close to doing that in real time.
Yeah.
Now, was that running on the specs of what the PS4 will be doing in its final? I don't know. I'm always hesitant if it's not direct gameplay. But it's still really exciting, and what they were talking about with the engine is pretty exciting. So, we've crossed that threshold of middleware. Let's go on to the software now. They announced a lot of games, and they brought more games to the foreground that they talked about already. And the first game that they announced...
A lot of new properties, too.
Yeah, they did, and that's exciting to me. With the new generation, we see a lot of new intellectual properties There's always some that return that get people interested. It's like, oh, hey, cool, there's a new Killzone game, I'm gonna get that. But then there's also Knack. It seemed weird to me that they started off with Knack because its art style is very Pixar or DreamWorks.
I was thinking it looked a lot like, not Jak and Daxter, the other one that Sony does, Ratchet and Clank. It looked very much in that realm of animation.
Yeah, which, don't get me wrong, it looked really cool. It looked like a cool game. All the frame rates were crisp, all the textures were nice and crisp. But it doesn't seem like something that you would use to show off next-gen gaming. But they kind of worked their way up to it. Yes, it did have
an interesting concept. I mean, it's I guess there's this big battle going on, and say, well, I'd like to add one more soldier to this battle or something like that, and they introduce this little tiny robot, this cute little robot, and then come to find out that the robot, well, you described this quite well last night, the robot basically can take objects and build itself larger with those objects, so it's kind of like a walking Katamari.
Yeah, and then at the same time, in reverse, it's like, how many times have you been playing Mario and you need to be like teeny tiny Mario to get through something, and you can just automatically shed all that extra stuff and go, under this little barrier was one of the things that they showed. And it looks like one of those like very, happy, warm-hearted feeling games. It looks like a nice, happy property.
Yeah, we need more of those feel-good games.
Feel-good games, yeah.
Yeah, we get too much dark and dreary and brown is real sort of stuff this generation. Again, that's why I like Nintendo.
Yeah, to counter brown is real, the next demo that they showed was for Killzone Shadowfall. And that, immediately it started off, and I'm looking at nice blue cityscapes. It actually reminded me of a little bit of Mirror's Edge as far as the color palette. But not in the art style. Like the color palette seemed like it. It was a
very warm, kind of inviting at first.
Yeah.
And just again going into one of the things that I really noticed about it was the graphical quality wasn't really a huge step up from what we see nowadays, but the quantity of it. I mean, just you could see so far in the distance in the city. There are particle effects and the explosions.
It's worth noting that Shadowfall was one of the few games that they showed actual gameplay footage. Someone playing the game, and they've had Killzone has had a problem with doctored gameplay footage at press conferences in the past, so take it with a grain of salt. But it was really exciting to see.
Yeah, I mean, I've never played a Killzone game before, but having watched that, I am kind of interested in seeing it in action, and presuming I get a PlayStation 4 sometime in the future, actually getting my hands on it.
Yeah, it looked more interesting to me than I'd seen in previous Killzone games, a lot because of that nice, vibrant art style.
Yeah, I'm wondering, there's one thing I noticed, in the very beginning, you walk through like a security checkpoint, and they scan you and your picture shows up on an ID, and I just happen to think since the camera is part of the system, I wonder if it'll actually scan your face and put your face on the ID.
That'd be neat.
Interesting feature. Yeah.
Since it's shipping with a camera, that's something where developers are going to be able to take advantage of that. They know that you have it. I forget if I said that already, but they know that everyone that has a PS4 has that camera, so developers will be more inclined to use it if they know that everybody has it.
Yeah.
As opposed to the PlayStation Eye or the Wii Vitality sensor, or...
Oh god, I forgot that thing existed. Or did it?
I forget. I think they realized nobody would get it, so...
The next one up was Drive Club. Do we...
Oh, actually,
is there anything to talk about in that?
I was actually surprised that it wasn't Gran Turismo, because I'd seen like little clips in that intro that they had shown before.
As was I.
Which was exciting. But I think it's going to be really cool. Again, it plays to that social gaming, in that it's more like car clubs and car enthusiasts. Now, I'm not too much of a car person. Yes, I have Mirror's Edge decals on my car, and I certainly enjoy driving. But for the people that really are like gearheads out there, I think it's really cool that they're going to have that game as really a community touchstone. And again, that's what PlayStation 4 is all about, is being that social console as well.
Yeah, one thing, it was kind of like when they were describing, before they got into describing the gameplay, they were describing the graphics, and there was almost a case of realism taken a little bit too far. Like, every single part of the engine and the interior
it was absolutely modeled. Car porn. Absolute car porn.
Like, every flake of the paint job reflected differently, and the reflectors of the headlights were realistic, and the light actually came from the... I'm like, I don't care, just let me drive. But then they started talking about the gameplay, and the team-based stuff sounded a little bit more interesting than, you know, ooh, shiny.
Yeah, and I doubt that they'll be that detailed in-game, but it could be kind of like Auto Vista mode for Forza Motorsport 4. So, moving right along...
as I drool on myself.
Moving right along, a guy from Sucker Punch came out to talk about their upcoming game. And now that you've seen it, that was a really weird way to introduce Infamous Second Son. Like, he comes out and he's all shell-shocked, and he's talking about the prevalence of closed-circuit television in the United Kingdom, and how 1 out of every 12 telephone conversations have been... 1 out of 12 people have had a telephone conversation recorded by the government, and let's throw a superhero into that.
What?
So I mean, it was a really interesting way of, like, near future, and it kind of did segue nicely into the Infamous demo that they showed, which was more of a trailer than anything. Again, pre-rendered, but his intro really felt more like it belonged to another property that was talked about that we'll get to later. I actually woke up the next day and was like, that was for Watch Dogs, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. Like, I was talking with some
surprise.
I was talking with someone during the PS4 conference, and he was just like, Watch Dogs, Watch Dogs, Watch Dogs. And at the time, I'm like, what the hell is this? But no, it was Infamous, and hey, look, there's one of those old IPs that's returning to the PS4. That I played Infamous 1, I haven't gotten to Infamous 2 yet, but I might do that just so that when I eventually get a PS4, I can play Second Son.
I have Infamous 1 sitting on my shelf of shame. I've put it in my system, but haven't actually played it yet.
Yeah, it's one of those where they didn't call it Infamous 3 because it looks like a different protagonist. Actually, I was surprised. Yeah. There were, with one exception, there were no numbers on the end of any of the games talked about at all. So... cool.
I think what the one exception was.
Blizzard.
Oh, right.
Okay. Anything more about Infamous, or should I move on?
Yeah, they didn't really... It was just pretty much a cinematic trailer, nothing really to talk about.
I think that they were kind of stacking the developers and saying, look at all the people that are behind the PlayStation 4, which is a really good idea for them because...
Yeah, Sucker Punch is a great studio. So.
Absolutely. And that's definitely going to be an exclusive too, so announcing exclusives is always a plus. Go ahead.
Oh, we're probably about to talk about the same one. The one by the designer of Braid?
No, actually. This, well, I don't believe so. It wasn't Jonathan Blow, was it? It was Genova Chen. Anyway, it was, I'm pretty sure that this was the developer
Thank God for editing.
Anyway, so let's move on to The Witness. The Witness is designed by that game company, which is behind the PS3 hits Flow, Flower, and Journey. Journey was really big for PlayStation Network. So the fact that they've got a launch title for PlayStation Network is really cool. Now, The Witness itself, really quick, I was watching it, and number one, I was really grooving to the music. Like, really, like, oh, this is awesome. I want that soundtrack. The actual game kind of looked like exploration for the sake of exploration, which actually brought me all the way back to, like, 1992 or 93 with Myst.
Yes, it did look very much like a fully rendered Myst. The graphics, actually, it almost looked like the graphics were up-res from Myst, because they weren't all that detailed, but they were very unique and colorful.
Or actually, I would say that they were detailed in the same way that, again, like Knack, or going back to that kind of animation like Shrek or Incredibles. very detailed when you look at it very close, but you can step back and get the broad strokes of it very easily.
Yeah, I found it to be almost almost have a cell shaded quality.
Yeah,
to it. Like it was
absolutely.
almost like they really kind of nailed down the visual style. And just for the record, I brought it up on Wikipedia, and it is from the creator of Braid. And he says it's going to be very much.
Was wrong.
Yeah, it's going to be very much focused on puzzle solving. He said it's going to be an open world, but not a huge open world. It's going to be a compact open world with a lot of puzzles.
Okay, that's cool.
And some of the puzzles in Braid were pretty mind-bending, so I can only imagine what he's going to do with this one.
I enjoyed Braid. I enjoyed the first 2/3 of Braid. The last third was too over my head, whether that's me or the game. I talked about it years ago, but that's really exciting, though, because, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Genova Chen as well, so whichever one it is, so knowing that it's Jonathan Blow. Yep, that's really cool.
Is Jonathan Blow.
And I think it's neat, too, that on something like PlayStation Network, there's still that name recognition, and there's going to be a chance for more people to get that. On the Xbox Live right now, there's the Indie Games Network, and they're going to be able to do that on PlayStation Network as well. One of them mentioned in like 5 seconds the ability to self-publish games on PlayStation Network, and then he moved right on, which left me here like...
Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Like, I missed it completely.
So, I think that's really cool. Again, kind of going back to the decade-old Web 2.0 idea, and that this is a social thing. People being able to express their own creativity, gamers being able to make, well, game programmers being able to make games on this wonderful x86 architecture. And, you know, they're not limited to doing it on Steam or on Xbox indie games. That it's going to be on PlayStation Network is just one more distribution venue that makes me really happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's really falling into that kind of, you know, App Store, Xbox indie games, you know, that sort
Google
of
Play and everything like that,
Yeah, that very independent, you know, if you can make a game, you can sell a game and not have to be, you know, Jonathan Blow. 'Cause actually, that's how Jonathan Blow got his start. It was just, he made Braid and made it successful, so.
Absolutely. So, let's see, after that is when Capcom came out. Actually, they came out and talked a little bit about the Move controller. I'm kind of gonna gloss over that because, it was a cool looking demo, but I really can't talk about it.
I don't see where it's really applicable quite yet. It was Media Molecule who created Littlebigplanet, so you know they're going to do something amazing with it, something that you can really interact with, but we don't really know what.
I'm wondering if
very abstract.
I'm wondering if the Move controller is going to be able to interact with PS4's camera. It should be able to, and they talked about being able to use it as a developer tool, being able to like draw in 3D space with it to make objects. So that's pretty cool, especially with being able designers being able to make stuff on PSN. If they can use the Move as part of like a developer kit, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. Capcom came out and showed
Pantaray, which we've already.
Yeah, they showed Pantaray
discussed.
and
who was it that showed the old man?
You know what? That might have been them. I don't know who it was. We'll just bring it up as a completely separate topic. One of these developers talked about, you know, showed a model of someone on the PS1 and then on the PS2 and the PS3, and they talked about how many polygons were involved in everything. And we got up to the PS4, and again, when you step back and you squint and you look at the broad strokes, they look very similar, but what they did that was mind-blowing was that they had a portrait or like a moving model of an old man. And he didn't speak, he didn't do anything. They rotated his head around and he kind of looked around. And the animation behind him was a better actor than I.
Yeah, he emoted. That was all he did. And one of the things was, you know, one of the big problems that we have nowadays is that uncanny valley of, you know, the Deadeye CG character. Yeah. You know, where their eyes have no soul. And it looked like they're getting closer without quite hitting that uncanny valley wall, because that's where you really have to watch it, is, you can take something from PS2 and look at it and relate to it, because it doesn't look real enough to really take you out of the game. But when you get to a point where it looks hyper-realistic, but has that... The first thing that comes to my mind is Jeff Bridges in Tron Legacy.
Mm-hmm. Although he was actually... Clue was actually invoking that almost on purpose. Invoking the Uncanny Valley.
I don't know how on purpose, because when they showed the very beginning of the movie where you're actually supposed to be looking at the real life Jeff Bridges, he's still... I mean, it was still very kind of awkward CG, dead-eye sort of animation. And it looks like, as far as gaming is concerned, they're kind of getting over that hump, or valley, as it were.
Give that man a story in 15 seconds. What did you feel about the old man just as he sat there and looked around?
Oh, I'd have to watch the video again, really, because... But, yeah, one of the things that really caught me was just the very subtle movements of the face. They weren't exaggerated. Like, you think back to the old 3D games where everything was kind of flailing and moving around. It was just very subtle.
Acting
kind of
for theater versus acting for film. Everything.
Yeah, I think that was the comparison they made. Yeah, and at one point he just kind of furrows his brow and he looks a little bit concerned or a little, he
looked like an old man that had lost so many friends along the way, and you just felt for him. And one thing that also really helped out was that lighting on the skin texture. When you're looking at skin, there's actually it looks solid from far away, but you get close and there is actually microns of depth there for light to kind of filter through. And I think that they got that down. They had some hair texturing, I think, that looked...
Especially, again, on the eyebrows. Yeah. Very impressive. You could sit there and count the hairs in his eyebrows.
So we've given about, 5 minutes to this old guy, and we're probably going to spend 30 seconds on Square Enix. But that's Square Enix's fault. They came out and they showed a pre-rendered cutscene from something that they'd already announced and already shown the video for. They just said, look, this is coming to PlayStation 4. And then the head of the Final Fantasy brand came out, the brand manager came out, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Are they going to announce a new one? Or are they going to announce, everyone's like, oh my god, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy VII Remake. And he comes out and he's like, we've got an announcement at E3. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Yeah, it's like, we are coming out with a Final Fantasy game for the PS4. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
He didn't even say that much. He said we have a Final Fantasy announcement at E3. And of course he said it in very, very heavily accented Japanese.
English.
There was
a lot of English in the press conference.
And actually, the Capcom presentation, he was having such problems with English that he just spoke it in Japanese and had a translator, which I kind of felt bad for him. But hey,
well, he said that they were broadcasting live on both sides of
it was
the Pacific,
6 p.m. Eastern, so it was in the morning in Japan. So cool.
I think it was just an excuse. But yeah, I was very underwhelmed by Squeenix's. One thing I was impressed, again, goes back to the face thing. The facial animations of the older man in the beginning of the cutscene were very natural. I didn't feel like it was video gamey or rubbery like they tend to be. And then it just went into a whole thing that looks like a typical Final Fantasy cutscene with the anime-looking characters and all the, fancy stunts and everything. I'm like, okay, Square Enix is doing what Square Enix does. Move on.
Move along. And
move
along we do on to Ubisoft, who with another gameplay...
No, Ubisoft.
Oh, I am soft. Who with another actual gameplay footage demo blew my mind with a game that had been announced last year, but that now we know is coming to the next generation. They talked about Watch Dogs, and this game is so high on my radar right now all of a sudden.
If there's a game that I'm going to buy a next-gen system for, that's the one. That
absolutely
just opens up so much potential.
And Watch Dogs basically talks about living in a hyper-connected future, and again, like what I said with Sucker Punch's intro for Infamous, I thought it actually belonged to Watch Dogs the next day, because it's all about here, the protagonist goes around with his phone as I'm looking for it, and he looks up this, he kind of like scans people, and here's their story in three lines. Oh, this guy's a corrupt executive who's skimming money off the top of his company. Let me get his ATM information. Let me hack this ATM. Got cash. This woman had just split up with her boyfriend and moved into a new apartment. Oh look, there's a dude that just had a restraining order filed against him. Huh, are they? Yep. Probability of conflict rising.
Yeah, it was really neat to watch, and it just, like I said, opens up so much potential of an open world game. I'm kind of wondering if they're going to do kind of a similar thing to what Red Dead Redemption did with the morality system. You can choose to help somebody, or you can choose to go about your business and do something else. You can hack the ATM, or you can be a good citizen and, try and expose him some other way.
Yeah, this character was definitely working outside the law, showing when they hacked the ATM, and then after they assaulted the guy who was violating his restraining order, the cops were after him as well after he took the guy down. Yeah, so and then the cop cars are after him, and he hacks into the city's mainframe and throws up like concrete barriers that take out a car.
And again, watching the video, the particle effects, the number of objects on screen, everything that's going on, and this is all, supposedly being done real time in the game engine. Just that highly hyper interactive environment.
Again, the broad strokes look very current generation game. When you look at it, I'm like, the graphics didn't look that much better. But yeah, you mentioned looking at the detail of the particles and the water and things like that.
And at one point he runs into a little grocery store or something like that, and vaults himself over a display thing, and you see the food fly all over the place, and the thing kind of tips slightly as he goes over it, and somebody shoots, and you see the particles of brick come off the wall. Again, just taking that level of graphics that we already have, punching it up a small notch, but just throwing so much stuff at you that you are immersed in it. And I really like that, this is what they're doing with the technology now. Not, oh, you can get this many more pixels or polygons on the screen, but this is what we can do with them.
The other thing that excites me about Watch Dogs is actually something that they didn't talk about at all, but I really hope that they do. They mention how the character is using his phone and connecting to everything, and earlier in the press conference they talked about the PlayStation 4 being able to interact with the other devices. If I can use this in-game to actually do the hacking on my phone, that would be so immersive. I really want that to happen. Ubisoft,
yes,
do this. Do this now.
Yes, that would be very awesome. Again, if there's a game I'm going to buy a PS4 or Xbox, whatever, for who I don't know, is Watch Dogs PS4? No, I think that's
Watch Dogs was actually already announced to be on every home console. So 360, PS3, Wii U. Now we can say PS4 and probably Durango if that's coming out holiday this year as well.
Yeah, so we might see a little bit of that interaction if they're going to do it on Xbox Smart Glass, Wii U Gamepad, but just the execution of it is it looks like it'd be a fun world to mess around in.
Alright, we're at the 50-minute mark, so I'm going to try to get through Activision Blizzard stuff, and then that'll wrap it up.
That's all we got left, really.
Yep. Yeah. Blizzard came out, and they had an announcement, and I'm like, okay, what could Blizzard do? Because they've done a little bit on the console before. Are they going to be developing something new completely for console? No. Diablo. Go ahead.
Quick little piece of trivia. What I didn't realize was the representative of Blizzard pointed out that Blizzard actually got their start on consoles, and I didn't realize that. Lost Vikings was one of their first games for the Super Nintendo, and I didn't realize that, because you think of Blizzard so much as a PC.
Yeah, you think Warcraft developer. And World of Warcraft and Diablo and StarCraft and everything like that. StarCraft Ghost was the last thing that they were going to do on console, and that kind of tanked. So Diablo 1 was on the PlayStation 1, and now Diablo 3 will be on the PlayStation 4, which I don't have much to say about it. Some people were pissed off because they're like, oh, well, it's obvious it was made for console. These are the people that get mad because they aren't the only one that has the fun thing anymore.
Yeah, typical fanboyism.
Yeah.
Just like when, what was it, Final Fantasy 13 was announced for the Xbox 360. Everybody was all up in arms, and it turned out to be better for the PS3 anyway, so shut up.
So, okay, so moving right on from there, Activision came out, and I'm like, well, they've done a really good job. Aside from Diablo 3, they haven't put the number on the end of anything. Is they really going to come out and announce Modern Warfare 4, or is it going to announce a new Call of Duty subheading? Or is Activision actually going to have a new IP? And they kind of did, because then they introduced Bungie with Destiny. Now, Bungie...
Yeah, it was kind of like we don't have any new IPs, but we have these guys.
Yeah, it's like, hi, we're a worthless publisher on our own, but you guys like Bungie, right? Yeah, you guys like what was shown with Destiny last week, so here, we'll have them come out and we'll show you our new IP.
We'll just take credit for it.
Yeah. So, Destiny looks really cool. I mean, if you've played Halo, you kind of get the idea of the gameplay behind it already. But it's a new sci-fi world, and I'm just happy for whatever Bungie's doing. It looks like they've got something that they will be developing on a constant basis, kind of just shy of MMO style thing. I think that Activision wants something to have a constant income, but without getting flack for yearly full game releases. They're kind of going towards, I think, with content releases for the same game instead of a new game every year.
Oh, right. We talked about that last night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is, it's a good thing. One thing I said this about this generation, what they should have done with sports games, instead of releasing, Madden 11, Madden 12, Madden 13, release Madden NFL 360, and then every year you download your roster updates, your graphic enhancements, whatever.
I don't know about that, because we know that, graphic enhancements, eventually you'd get a patch that would be like the size of a game. It'd be huge on your hard drive. You may as well get a new game. But every 2 or 3 years, I remember MotoGP, it didn't end up coming out every year because it didn't get enough sales, but one of the releases was MotoGP 09-10, a 2-year release. 09/10. And
colon cancer.
Yeah, right. But it was still a good idea to do it like that. So again, I don't think sports games will do that, and they're kind of the exception. But if Activision, I think they realize once the Call of Duty horse starts dying, then instead of just run it until the well is dry, let's start siphoning it back a little.
I think they've been beating that dead horse for the past few years. Honestly, even
it's
Call
still
of Duty
selling
fans
well, though.
I know.
It's not like...
Even Call of Duty fans I know say, it's not the same.
Yeah, well, hopefully they learn from that and scale it back a little instead of just running it dry like they did with Guitar Hero, tanking that entire genre of game.
I know. It's such... And now Rock Band is dead too, which I still blame on Activision, even though they had nothing to do with it. It's, just, like you said, milking the cow until it's dry, and then everybody else in the genre suffers.
I feel bad for ending on a negative note, so let's wrap this up really quick. The PlayStation 4 looks to be a really cool social console, which, I mean, that's a buzzword, and you take a drink every single time if you want to watch, and I say social. No, it looks like a really cool thing, and I'm happy with the direction that that's going in. I'm really excited for the PlayStation 4. And I'm interested to see what Microsoft does to step up and say, are they going to hit that bar? Are they going to hit a bar that's next to it, something that's really cool but completely different? Are they going to go above that? Are they going to be below that? And I think now that Sony got the jump with a press conference in February as opposed to announcing it at E3, they've got the jump on press, and now they have set the bar for Microsoft to hit instead of the other way around like it was last generation.
And it's really saying something for me to agree with you on this, and for me to say this myself, that I'm actually excited about the PS4, and I have not been excited about any PlayStation system ever. I mean, I've been excited about, certain games that come out either exclusively or primarily on PlayStation systems, but this is the first time I've looked at a PlayStation console and said, that's something that I really want. It does things that
I would enjoy doing.
Yeah, and especially, like I said, Watch Dogs, I'm really going to keep an eye on that, because if that turns out to be, the killer app of the next generation, I'm going to want to play that.
Yeah, well, I think that's one where...
And play it in the best way possible.
Yeah, me personally, I'm probably going to end up getting that in the 360 this year because of my budget, but next year, I think, is when I'll have the time to upgrade to a new system, whether it's PS4 or Durango, and then I'll upgrade my library at that point. So,
there is... Pardon me for interrupting. There is one thing that we neglected to talk about. Speaking of old libraries.
Yeah, I noticed that we.
Backwards compatibility.
I noticed that we skipped that. Did you want to hit that really quick?
Yeah, we can take care of it really quick. Basically, the PlayStation 4 will be able to play PlayStation 1. Which way is this going? PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3. And of course PlayStation 4 games, but we don't quite know how yet. Can you pop a PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 disc into the system and play it off of that, or do you have to download it?
It's not going to be hardware. It's going to be games that are available on PlayStation Network it'll be able to play, but it's not going to have hardware backwards compatibility. Partially because that introduces a lot of instability into it. That's part of the reason that early PS3s were number 1 so expensive and number 2 so prone to failure. So it's what they're going to have to do.
Using computer processors, you could easily build a pretty solid emulator.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody else does it.
So what they're going to do is, all those games will play off of the PlayStation Network. So will there be a way to trade in your game for credit? Will you be able to pop in your disc and it says, oh look, you have God of War Collection for PS3, starting your download right now, or will you have to pay for it?
I also forgot PSP games were also on that list, and
which calls to mind which calls to mind PSP to PSP Go, how Sony kind of bungled that whole thing. Oh, you'll be able to play all your PSP
and
games.
Vita as well.
Well, yeah,
you can play PSP games on the Vita, but you can't put the actual disc in, so you're going to have to download it again, which means you have to pay $10, $20, whatever dollars for it.
All right, moving on to the next topic, and that'll be my segue. So I think we're done. Oh,
you're gonna edit that in?
Yeah, I'm gonna splice that backwards, or not. So okay, so yeah, I won't. I'll be too lazy. So give me just a second here. Okay, so yeah, so we covered everything. I apologize for that sort of skipping around haphazardly, but we just wanted to make sure that we got everything.
And to be completely honest with everybody, this is take 2 of the video.
It is.
I had a little audio problem on my end.
We had what is technically known as a whoopsie. So when I say we talked about it last night, I say we actually talked about it last night. So yeah, so that's cutting out really quick. I think I will just keep that in the same because it makes sense. That's software discussion. So whatever. Also, I'm lazy. So anyway, going back. So yeah, the PlayStation 4 is a really exciting console, and it set the bar and everything like that. I'm looking forward to having one of these, and I'm looking forward to E3, where we get to see what the actual system looks like.
Yes, and supposedly. I mean, you never know.
Yeah.
But of course, again, being the Nintendo fan and Wii U owner, I want to see how Nintendo's going to respond to this, because Nintendo kind of does their own thing, but they were the first out the gate with this generation system, so...
Yeah, they're going to get a bit of a boost from that, much like how Microsoft did with the Xbox 360 a year before the PS3 and Wii U. And I want to see what Microsoft does. So I'm going to call it right now, in that when E3 rolls around this summer, you can expect another one of these videos wrapping it up, because, Claw, I had a ton of fun today. It's been too long since we've been able to do this.
And E3 is always a fun thing to talk about because, you know, you've got all the good and bad piled into one.
And we're also, I mean, we're at like the hour mark right now, so we're going to take days and pile it into an hour. That was another thing that Sony did by jumping ahead, is that they got all this press on their own. So, yeah, so that's, look forward to another one of these videos at E3. Claw, we'll see you then. And for the rest of my viewers... I will see all of you next week. Thank you so much for joining us and listening the whole time.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.